Great pleasure to be joined by Yudhajit Basu himself. Yudhajit, first of all, many congratulations and all the best for that competitive segment. Tell us a little bit about this competitive segment, and then we'll talk about the film itself.
Thank you very much. It's a student section in Cannes. It was previously called Cine Foundation, and this year they have changed the name to La Cinef. And they select films from film school films from all around the world. And I think this year there are 14 live action films and 2 animation films, mine being one of the live action films. And it's the only Indian selection in La Cinef this year in competition. So I'm very happy to be there in Cannes, and I'm looking forward to it.
Right, it's a tough competition obviously out there. So this, just to understand, this was your diploma film, am I right?
Yeah, it was my diploma film from FTII.
All right. Now, tell us a little bit about this film. It is, of course, set at the time of the COVID pandemic, but it's not entirely about that. It's about exile. It's about this particular lady having a menstrual period, having to be exiled just because she's having a menstrual period.
I think this film has several layers and themes and not a central theme. If I have to narrow it down to a central storyline, it would be about a girl trying to elope with her lover, who is a windmill god, during the pandemic, while the girl is herself is isolated with other women in a hut during her menstrual cycle. So I think the film deals with menstruation and how it is still looked at as taboo in India today, and also about the fear of the pandemic. But in addition to these 2 social themes, on an artistic level, which I was very interested in, was to bring out the contrast of death and beauty which happened during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we used to see that the sky would become very beautiful and the jungles would be very fresh and green because there were less pollution, less human habitation. People were dying. So nature in some case nature was like indifferent to the death of people. So there was a very stark contrast between beauty of nature and people dying. So this impacted me strongly. And that also is another aspect of the film that I wanted to bring out, the sense of fear through beauty.
Would you say that another major aspect that you're trying to tell through this film was essentially about taboos? I mean, the taboo, for example, that still persists around something like menstruation in 2023, that taboo still exists. You chose, of course, to set this at the time of the pandemic, although you're telling a story about a taboo. What is the reason for that?
I was only interested in the story of these women who were huddled inside a hut during menstruation. And as I talked to many villages, what I understood is that as other human beings, what we went through during the pandemic, we were all isolated. And if anyone got COVID, that person had to be, isolated from the others, and they were untouchables while they were going through COVID. So as what the entire world went through during the pandemic, these women go through this experience every cycle of the menstruation. So it was very striking for me. And I felt that what happened to these women during the COVID, whether they were still isolated in huts, that I wanted to research, but I didn't have a very clear answer from anyone, naturally, because no one was out during the COVID days. So I thought of, introducing this theme of the pandemic, where everyone is isolated, and these women who go through this isolation every menstrual cycle, even during the times when the world is normal.
All right, Yudhajit, all the best, of course, at that and all the other films that you're working on. Thank you so much for joining us here on The India Story.